Hello everyone, I'm Rezwan Chaudhry here. I'm working as an IB PYP teacher at Abdul Khadim International School in Dhaka, Bangladesh. Today we have a special guest. Her name is Sarah Chaddad. She's an IB PYP educator from last 3 years from Cairo, Egypt. And today she's going to talk about creating and supporting an impactful central idea. So welcome, Sarah, in our channel. The floor is now is up to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I first wanted to thank you for having me on this channel. It's honestly like a real pleasure to be here amongst these educators. I've seen some of your work, and I honestly feel very happy to be here. Let me start by saying that this is a very down to basics type of presentation. It's not something where you'll find like a lot of frills and things like that. It's just very much about the essentials of central ideas, how to make a really strong one, how to support it, and some extra tips for subject teachers specifically. So if we get right to it, this is something that I read recently that I absolutely loved. It says the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. So this was something said by a futurist called Alvin Toffler, who passed away in about 2016. And the interesting thing is that this man spent a lot of his life predicting the future, what it would look like. Some of it was right, some of it was wrong. But this specific quote really sticks with me because it really sums up a lot about what it is to be an IB PYP teacher, where you know that the jobs that exist today did not exist 50 years ago. No one would have told you 50 years ago that you would be on a YouTube channel and being a YouTuber or something, or even jobs like a game developer at such a high rate, and things like that don't just make teaching easy at all. Like, you need to predict the future. That's really hard. But in the PYP, we're giving our learners the opportunity to learn skills in addition to their knowledge that will really help them be the leaders of tomorrow and function in tomorrow's society. Now, the way this presentation is structured is that first we're going to talk about CBL, concept-based learning. Why do we use it? What is it? Why do we use it? Why is it important? And why is it the base of how to create a central idea? Next, we're going to talk about actually building the central idea and how a solid central idea can really strengthen your curriculum. And then we're going to get into how to support it with different elements of the PYP. And then finally, there will be some additional information for subject integration. In the last year, I've been a part of a school, an IB school in Egypt that just started, and through an incredible amount of support from the administration, including the academic director and the PRP coordinator and principal, we've been able to understand these concepts. And so it was feasible for us to get our accreditation in our first year, which honestly, like, without this much support and understanding these things, we wouldn't have been able to do that. And definitely subject integration is a big one. So first things first, central ideas for concept-based learning. Now, what is concept-based learning? Why do we do it? We have here on the right side of the screen a diagram that shows basically the idea of different elements of learning and how they fit together. And so it explains that concept-based curriculum and instruction is a three-dimensional design model that frames factual content and skills with the disciplinary concepts, generalizations, and principles. What that means in a nutshell is that you've got facts and skills on one side, and you've got generalizations, principles, and concepts on the other. And in traditional learning, we don't often integrate them. But what we really try to do in concept-based learning is make sure that we are teaching the umbrella concept, and within it, we teach through facts, which is knowledge, and skills, what the learners should be able to do. Now that together, when you bring them together, it really creates a solid foundation for the learners to grasp bigger and more abstract concepts and be able to reach accurate generalizations and form certain principles. Now, the way that happens is that we have to look at concepts in sometimes two different types of concepts. It helps sometimes to look at it that way, where you have macro concepts and micro concepts. Macro, think broad, and micro, think deep. So the idea is that macro concepts provide what we call the breadth of your learning experience. So it means that what you're teaching, your concept, it goes across subject, and it definitely reaches interdisciplinarity and very often transdisciplinarity. And micro concepts really help you dive deeper into different ideas within each concept, or different concepts within each concept. So that means that within a certain concept, you can really delve a lot more into knowledge and skills and understand things on a deeper level. It's sort of like think of it this way. If you're filling a container with water, you're going to pour at a certain spot in that container. It doesn't create a cylinder of water. No, water expands and it gets broader. It covers the entire bottom of the container. And then as you add more, it also gets deeper. So it's both at the same time creating an entire whole. Now, if we look at an example, we could use, for example, the subject of drama. Now, in drama, you're going to talk about character, movement, voice, and many other macro concepts. Within each of them, you have your micro concepts. So in character, you can think of how characters change and grow, how they have needs and wants, how they have habits, how they may find certain purpose. That's your character with its micro concepts. Within movement, you have micro concepts such as angle, lines, balance within a space. In voice, you have like the tone, the pattern, perhaps, expression, and emphasis. And as you can see, some of these micro concepts also apply, or most of them also apply to many other subject areas as well. So we're going to try to think about integrating concepts into the central ideas. Now, it's a good idea to start thinking about contextualize versus conceptualize when you're first starting in the IB program, because within the IB PYP, it's sometimes challenging to get from one to the other. Now, it's great to contextualize things where you know that you have a certain curriculum and there's a certain context in which you're going to teach it, and you create these activities to put these concepts into a certain context. But conceptualizing goes even deeper. And organizing your unit of inquiry, or your UI, really needs you to think in terms of concept instead of context, not so much. So contextualize your curriculum by turning your topics into concepts. Here we have a diagram on the right side of the screen that shows the organization of time during a unit of inquiry. The reason this is important is that teachers who are starting their PYP journey often don't realize that your subject that you're doing does fit very, very much into the unit of inquiry, but you will also need to have standalone teaching time. And this diagram sort of shows like an estimate of the of one of the ways that you could sort of divide your time within your schedule. But you do need to know that in order to properly reach this balance, it's going to be up to you. And so, for example, in language, you know that you're going to spend most of your time integrating into the unit of inquiry, and then some of the time, not so much. In mathematics, it's almost 50-50. Science and social studies are basically all within the UOI timeline as much as possible. And we'll talk in a few moments about why this is so important. So you see here a diagram or an image. What does this, like, I want everyone who's tuning in here to think, what does this look like to you? What do you see here? It's like, just take a minute. You say maybe what's in the background, what's hanging there. It sort of looks like a construction site inside a head, right? And we have different levels. And so this is scaffolding or scaffolding, where you need to be able to get your ideas to develop over different levels. So the thing here is that we're gonna reach our concepts and make them at higher levels of thinking. This image here shows you 3 steps. So there's, to put it into context, we're using a social studies topic, and our level 1 here at the bottom of the page says all cultures have celebrations. Okay, this is an interesting sentence. Yes, all cultures have celebrations, and we know that. It might not be obvious to the younger learners, but it is a very, very straightforward sentence. It really isn't that abstract or complex, but to get an effective central idea, you have to really raise the level of abstract and get to a more complex level of thinking, a higher order of thinking. So how do we get to the next level from here? We ask ourselves the question, why? So from level 1 to level 2, you'll ask yourself why. If level 1 says all cultures have celebrations, you're going to ask yourself, well, why do all cultures have celebrations? You get in this way to the level 2, which is the idea that celebrations express traditions of a culture. Not everyone is going to reach this specific sentence, but it's just an example. So if you've gotten there, yeah, celebrations express traditions of a culture. That is also true. But then you need to ask yourself, so what? If you've reached level 2, you need to try to ask yourself, so what? What happens then? In this case, we asked, so what is the significance or effect? So what's the significance of celebrations expressing traditions of the culture? Through that question, we were able to get to level 3 of complexity, which is the idea that traditions help to unify a people. Now, the words that are underlined here are the particular concepts that we're addressing. Culture, celebrations, traditions, and people, these are concepts. So the fact of reaching from one level to the next of complexity really allows us to have a broader umbrella in which we can ask more and more questions, because ultimately inquiry is our goal. So broadening the topic really helps us do that. So the idea that you get from level 1 to level 2 by asking why, and then from level 2 to level 3 by asking so what? So what is this? So what if we do that? So what could happen? Now, I have a suggestion for anyone who is open to practicing this with us. We could open this Padlet right here. I'm not sure where to send the link. So if you have an idea on how to do that, please let me know. But you could try actually reaching these different levels or going through these different levels using these questions, why and so what. In terms of animals and the environment, for example, that's another group of concepts that we could try. So how would you like me to share the link? Do you have an idea?
Do you want me to share it?
Sure, because I'm not sure where to share it on exactly,
Yeah,
but
I'm sharing it in the chat box.
great. So anyone with this link wants to try to give it a shot on their own is more than welcome.
Dear participant, if you want to give your reflection, we have given a Padlet link in the chat box. We are requesting you to click on it and you can give your reflection. And there is a question for you on the screen. Thank you.
So we could either wait for the reflections to come in, which I think would be preferable. For example, say 10 minutes, or what do you prefer?
Yeah, we can come back again to this slide. You can go on with other slides.
Okay, because I have sort of like another example of it already coming in the next slide. So one of the ways that we looked at this was getting from, for example, say level 1, we said animals live in different environments. I mean, that's the first thing that comes to mind, right? And then you can ask yourself, why? Why do animals live in different environments? We reach level 2 of complexity. Animals meet their unique needs in different environments. So now we know what these environments represent for the animals. We've gotten more complex. But if we have it in us to ask even further, so what? That would raise the level of complexity and the level of broadness of the concept at hand. So we'll ask, so what if animals could not meet their needs in an environment, for example? In this case, we reached level 3 and we thought animals could not meet their needs in an environment would not survive. So here we've reached another concept, survival. So we've added the concepts of needs and survival, and we've really enlarged the topic and we've broadened our area of research and our area of inquiry and our area of understanding as well. So we're going to be able to get more knowledge through this level of thinking, and we're going to be able to inquire a lot further. That's what you need when you're making a central idea. Now, in order to get along those levels of complexity, we're not just looking at these underlined words, the concepts themselves, but we're also tying them together. And we need to use that, you need to do that through the use of verbs. Now, as there's a level 1 of complexity, there are also some level 1 verbs that are sort of the verbs that we call no-no verbs in a way, where these are things you want to try to avoid when creating a central idea or when getting to higher concepts or higher complexities. Verbs like affects, impacts, influence, is, are, have. So here, all cultures have celebrations. That's really a level 1 verb. It's not going to get you anywhere. It doesn't mean anything. But what would mean something is an action verb. Now, action words reinforce the concepts. The relationships between concepts are emphasized using strong action words to best promote an understanding of these concepts. Now, examples of these action words are create, connect, develop, interact. And there is a plethora of verbs that you could use. And many schools like to adopt, for example, the solo taxonomy, and it's basically like the Bloom's taxonomy for all the educators who have worked with that. Many IB schools like the solo taxonomy. It's 5 levels, and you have basically a list of verbs that would be ideal to use at different levels of understanding and different levels of complexity. You can find these online all over, and they're very, very helpful when it comes to creating a very strong central idea. Now, above and beyond, we've talked about complex thinking and we've talked about strong action words. These are 4 other things that really can make a strong central idea. You have to ask yourself, is the concept or the sentence that you're using for your central idea, does it include broad concepts? That's number 1. So in that case, What it means is that can it be addressed by multiple subjects? Does it encompass math, art, language, drama, all of it? And then you can ask yourself as well, is it timeless? So people 100 years ago or 100 years from now, would they still be able to relate to it? Will they be still able to understand it or work with it to a certain extent? Is it universal? So do cultures around the world have a chance at being able to relate to this concept or this central idea that you're making? And number 4, is it abstract? So if you think at this point, if I ask you, everyone who's listening, think of a tree. What are the chances, do you think, that all of you thought of the same exact type of tree? It's little to none, right? I mean, it depends on your own environment, where you live. What kind of trees do you see? What kind of trees did you see growing up? What kind of trees were you exposed to? What kind of tree just popped up in your mind right now? It's not the same for each person in their own different culture or background. So that means that it is abstract. That is your concept. If it is broad, universal, timeless, and abstract, then it's a strong concept. You need this for your central idea. Now, the way you're going to organize yourself when making your central idea is that you're going to build it in 4 steps. First, you think of your theme, your transdisciplinary theme. Is it who we are? Is it sharing the planet? Is it how the world works? You need to identify your transdisciplinary theme because, as we all know, your theme comes with a description that includes already a certain group of concepts that are relevant to this specific theme. And whether you have 4, 5, or 6 themes throughout your PYP year, you will be addressing each theme in its own way, with its own relevant concepts. So next, you look at your curriculum. Some, or most, like, I mean, all of us know that we have the scope and sequence, right? And many of us are supplementing using external curricula, like, I don't know, maybe Common Core that's particular to a certain state or something. You might be really using more curricula to give more detail, or maybe to organize yourself better throughout the year, whatever is working for you in your context, in your school. And so you need to really look at your curriculum and identify the different concepts that exist within it. Like we said earlier, with drama, are your characters, are your concepts character and voice and movement, for example? What are your concepts in mathematics, in language, in science? So whichever you have, whatever you're teaching, you need to analyze your curriculum and find your concepts, identify your concepts. Next, you cross-check the concepts and identify relationships. What does that mean? It means that throughout your curriculum and along with the transdisciplinary theme that you're addressing, you will have concepts that relate. So say, for example, you realize that identity, and you're a social studies teacher, and you realize that identity exists in your curriculum for this specific age group, and it's also within the theme for who we are. So that's where you're going to plug that in. So each of your themes throughout the year, you're going to plug in your concepts that are relevant to that theme. And finally, scaffolding or scaffolding. You're going to increase the level of abstractness and the complex thinking to reach the highest order thinking that you possibly can. Now, if we look at this, we're going to try to evaluate sort of this central idea. The theme is how the world works. The central idea says exploring outer space widens people's understanding of the system of the universe. Now, here are our criteria. Is it broad? Do you believe that many subjects could integrate into such a central idea? Do you, as a math or PE or science teacher, see that your colleagues from other subjects can find this relevant? Do they have material to teach here? Is it timeless? Do people all around the world maybe relate to it in a certain way? So is it universal? Is it abstract, or is it way too straightforward? Is it complex? Can it be scaffolded further to reach higher levels of thinking? Do we have no verbs in here? Could it be more abstract? And does it contain strong action verbs? So from your perspective, as a participant reading this central idea, do you believe that it could be better in some way? Perhaps could it be more universal? Perhaps could it be more complex? This is up to you. And you need to also understand that when creating your central idea, you're not alone. And this is something that many starting IB teachers tend to forget, or they're not entirely convinced of at first. The emphasis on collaboration. It really, really is essential. You have to collaborate. You have to be able to meet with your colleagues and say, hey, this is the central idea I came up with. Does it apply to your subject? Do you believe that you could possibly integrate here? And even as homeroom teachers, you might be at a school where you're privileged enough to have a very wide range of cultures in your class. So your students come from different backgrounds, and obviously you must be inclusive of all of these different cultures and backgrounds and different thought processes. So are you reaching that from this central idea? Yes or no? So it's up to you to evaluate. Here's another one. The theme was how we express ourselves. The central idea was stories can be told in many ways for different reasons. Is it broad? Is it timeless? Is it universal? Is it abstract? Is it complex? Or maybe do we need to ask ourselves? Stories can be told in many ways for different reasons. Okay, why? And then, so what? Now that we know how to make a central idea and how to evaluate one, you need to also know that there are many, many elements in the PYP that help you support your central idea. So going from central idea, that is our broad umbrella, we will specify further different elements that will put things into perspective and help you guide your teaching and learning process. Now, you can do that through lines of inquiry, through key and related concepts, through the ATL skills or the approaches to learning skills, and the learner profile. So, if we start with lines of inquiry and key concepts, you will see why in a moment I've grouped these together. Each line of inquiry addresses the central idea through a different conceptual lens using the key concepts. So for example, if we have a theme that is how we organize ourselves, our central idea could be people use organizations to solve global problems. Now, the concepts here are organizations and problems, right? We've contextualized them. These are the concepts. We have also contextualized them by saying that they are global problems, that people use these organizations. Now, the lines of inquiry will help you organize different parts of your inquiry, because anyone around the world could take this central idea and come up with completely different lines of inquiry than you. That is why you will collaborate with your team to find what suits you guys best as a school, as a grade level, as a class. You will be able to create your program of inquiry best by collaborating and by bouncing ideas off of each other, because maybe I, as a homeroom teacher, will get stuck. I'll have one line of inquiry that I'll think of, and then I don't know any others. So getting together and brainstorming and thinking about it together really will help. In this case, we came up with 3 lines of inquiry, which is usually the standard. One says rights and responsibilities and their roles. So that's one aspect of this broader topic, the central idea, that we're going to tackle. Another aspect, another direction of inquiry will be the relationship between our rights and responsibilities And then a third would be strategies for resolving conflicts. Now, the way we come up with these is definitely helped by attaching a different key concept to each line of inquiry. So the key concepts, as anyone with experience in the IB would know, are form, function, responsibility, connection, causation, change, and perspective. Now, within the same example, our central idea, the big umbrella theme, says people use organizations to solve global problems. Our first line of inquiry, rights and responsibilities and the roles. Here, we're looking through the conceptual lens of responsibility. Responsibility is a concept. It is quite broad, and it applies to many cultures around the world. It is timeless, it is abstract, and it will help us guide our learners into the correct direction, which is basically here, rights and responsibilities and their roles. This is what we've chosen as a team. The next one, we're talking about relationships, so it is connection. And the third line, we're talking about strategies for resolving conflicts. So we're thinking about the function of these strategies. What types of strategies could we use, right? Now, organizing it this way really helps you think about what direction you're trying to take when addressing each line of inquiry. Because within your unit of inquiry, you know that if you're, for example, going to take 6 weeks for one unit, you have 3 lines. Each line is going to take 2 weeks. So you need to be able to organize the facts, the knowledge, and the skills that you're teaching in each line of inquiry. So this will really help keep you focused in a certain area. Here's another example, who we are. That was the theme. And the central idea said, experiences and choices shape who we become. Now, our 3 lines of inquiry were individuals are responsible for their decisions, seen through the key concept of responsibility. Next, reflection and self-discovery based on experiences. That was perspective. And then finally, people's knowledge contributes to society, which was through function. Now here, if this looks like it's a lot, then let's really break it down. What this means is that, for instance, people's knowledge contributes to society and the function. How these actually translate within the classroom, it means that you're going to look at the information people have and how that helps their society. We chose to interpret that in terms of jobs. People gain knowledge and skills to have certain jobs within their society, and having these jobs helps their society. And so our learners were able to analyze each other's jobs, and basically they had a learning experience at the end that was their summative assessment where they were career advisors for each other. So it might look intimidating on the page, especially for beginners or for first-time IB teachers, but what it means is that you've got these big concepts that you're interpreting in a way that fits your curriculum and fits your grade level, fits their understandings, and you can really take your students or your learners into a direction where they will inquire. They're gonna have breadth of inquiry and depth of inquiry, and they will get through all of these different abstract levels of thinking and complex levels of thinking, just because you've organized yourself in an efficient way. Key concepts really get to the bottom of that. Now, related concepts help further define the factual content of the unit of inquiry. They can be determined when analyzing the curriculum and identifying the concepts within it. What that means is that your different subjects will need to come up with related concepts to support the knowledge that your learners will be learning throughout this unit of inquiry. So if we take this same example of who we are, experiences and choices shape who we become, we have got here related concepts of growth and reproduction in science, and choices, roles, and identity in social studies. Now, you can take a moment here to think, what other related concepts would you identify for your subject? Say you're a PE teacher, what would you put here? If you're a language teacher alone, what would you put here? Now, keeping in mind that a unit of inquiry is transdisciplinary, so you need to integrate. And we'll talk a little more about that in a bit. But what other related concepts would you get? Now, your related concepts, they come from your subject curriculum as well. ATL skills also are going to help you build a stronger unit and really support your central idea. Now, these ATL skills are called approaches to learning skills, and they are used to define the skills that will be utilized in the UI. Now, we have skills like social skills, thinking skills, communication skills, self-management skills, and research skills. So let's see how we've divided them up within this same example. Now, we've defined 3 skills: self-management, thinking, and research. The reason why we've done it this way is because each of these skills will be connected to one of the lines of inquiry, just like the key concepts were also related directly to the lines of inquiry. Now, for example, our self-management skill really goes with the first line that says individuals are responsible for their decisions. Now, you can't have self-management without responsibility, without reflection. And thinking goes with the second line of inquiry, reflection and self-discovery based on experience. And then when you look at people's knowledge contributes to society, this sentence, its focus is knowledge and how that goes with society. And so we've attached the ATL skill of research to this particular line of inquiry. Why? Because the learners will be able to really apply their research skills in order to understand how people's knowledge will contribute to the society. And they truly applied this when they were taking on their summative assessment and they were thinking about being career advisors for their peers. And they needed to understand the other's career choice before being able to advise them. So they had to do some research on it. And they needed to truly get to a good place of understanding. So this is how we organized it to sort of support them in that path. Next, you have the learner profile. Now, the way the IBO defines it is that they say it describes a broad range of human capacities and responsibilities that go beyond academic success. And that's the point of the IB. We're teaching skills, we're teaching concepts, we're teaching how to live life to lifelong learners. And so we're empowering them with the things that they need to be embedded in their life in order for them to reach whatever heights that they need to reach. So our young learners, they're going to start to define themselves more and more through the learner profile as they get to know it, as they get to understand it better. And then they can sort of use it to evaluate their thoughts and actions. Now, also for anyone who's like really beginning in the IB, these are the 10 learner profile traits or learner profile attributes that make up the IB PYP learner profile. Got communicator, risk taker, open-minded, thinker, inquirer, balanced, principled, reflective, caring, and knowledgeable. Now, how does that apply to your design of the unit of inquiry? How will it help your kids in their process of inquiry? Well, you will choose learner profile attributes that match what you're trying to get your learners to do or to learn. So they need to match your skills and the knowledge and these lines of inquiry. Now, let's go again to the same example. Individuals are responsible for their decisions. Here we've attached the idea of balanced, because In order to make decisions, you need to be balanced. You need to be able to really look at a situation from all perspectives and to be responsible. The idea of responsibility. Now, the second line, reflection and self-discovery based on experience. Here we have perspective, and we've attached the idea of being knowledgeable. And for people's knowledge contributes to society, the way that we're looking at it is through the function. And so we've attached the idea of being an inquirer, because they need to be able to inquire and know more about how their knowledge can contribute to society. So would you have done it this way? Would you have chosen different learner profile attributes or traits for this particular unit of inquiry? It is, at the end of the day, up to you and your colleagues to really brainstorm on this and try to find what fits you best. Now, once you've properly really built your unit of inquiry, you really need to think about the single subjects and how they integrate into the UI. And you're thinking about them as a homeroom teacher, and of course, if you are the single subject teacher. Now, we go back to this because it's very representative of what you need to take into consideration. We're doing transdisciplinary learning in the IB. An essential part of the IB is this transdisciplinary teaching and learning that occurs on a daily basis. UI will always need the integration of subject teachers and different subjects into this UOI. As IB PYP educators, it's our role to ensure that a healthy and productive amount of integration takes place in each UOI. That means that if you look at this chart, you understand that you do not, unless you're doing science and social studies, you do not have to worry about all of your time being spent completely integrated into the UI. And when you're first starting out, you might not be able to reach this level. And you might feel that your curriculum requires a change here. And that is okay, as long as you do understand that most of your time will be going towards integrating in the unit of inquiry to ensure transdisciplinary learning, but that you'll also need some standalone teaching time, because some concepts you might not be able to integrate. Now, let's see how to do that, how to ensure subject integration. First, each subject has its own curriculum, like we said. Analyze yours and identify your concepts. These will become your related concepts. So the related concepts in your UI, in this plan that you're creating, they will come from the single subject teachers and single subjects that are integrating into the UI. Like earlier, we saw that in one of the units that we had organized, there were two related concepts of growth and reproduction within science, because that's where they fit best. So you will analyze your curriculum and you will see where it fits into the unit of inquiry, or which unit of inquiry it fits best. You need to really focus on collaboration. Again, I cannot emphasize it enough. Collaboration, collaboration, collaboration. Collaborative meetings are a great place to cross-check concepts and relate them to the UI to ensure relevance. So let's say you're at the beginning of your school year, you're a new IB teacher, you have no idea what you're doing. You get together with your teachers, you're a subject teacher, and you don't know where all of your concepts fit. You're going to go back to the diagram that we had where you had all the steps of figuring out your concepts and where they fit into each unit of inquiry. That relates to every single subject. You're going to do that together. Say you're a math teacher and you want to integrate the concept of time, but you're not sure where to put it. Now, if in one of the units, let's say they talk about family and roles and habits or routines, that's where you're going to integrate time. If you're talking about early years, you're going to say morning, afternoon, and night in my routine, and you can have this integration of understandings of time. Or if for the older kids, say second and above, you can actually then take out a clock and introduce clocks and how to read them, analog and digital, and really delve deep into that part of your curriculum and meet your standards while still integrating. But make sure that your integration is within the concepts that you're teaching. So you're not just saying, oh, in the morning we do this, in the morning we do that. No, if you're talking about family members and their roles and your routines, make sure that you're sticking to the idea of the routine. This is a concept. What do we do together? What are our roles if you're going to do that? So make sure that you stay within the concepts to ensure conceptualization instead of only contextualization. And C, this is something also that a lot of beginning IB teachers don't fully understand yet, but it is very, very important. The idea that you need to remain flexible. Be open-minded just like you ask your students or your learners to be open-minded. We are all in this together as a team. We're here trying to ensure the proper understandings of different concepts for our learners, and you might at some point realize that you planned a what seems to you perfect unit of inquiry. You put all of your key concepts, all of your related concepts, all the learner profile, ACLs, everything. Your lines of inquiry are great. Your central idea is on point. It's abstract. It's timeless. It's everything. But you suddenly find your learners inquiring in a direction that might not be exactly what you planned. So you need to be flexible and understand that sometimes the best thing to do is to follow the learners and their interest and keep guiding them, but do allow their interest to take the lead once in a while. And you may need to switch things up in your planning and switch things up in the UI that you've built, and that is okay. And either way, as an IB school, you will revisit your program of inquiry or your POI. You will do that. You'll do it at the beginning of the year, if in your first year, in the middle of the year, at the end of the year, until you actually build something that you're satisfied with, keeping in mind that your learner's inquiry may inspire change. At the end of the day, the PYP is flexible and it's balanced. PYP ensures that everything is connected, and it empowers your learners to make choices, to have agency over their learning. And if that means that within your central idea, your lines of inquiry may change, that's okay. Keep reflecting, keep collaborating with your peers, and you will reach a solid unit of inquiry with a great central idea that you will be able to work with and that you will be able to introduce, and your learners will be able to inquire into it and stay engaged. So hang in there, you've got it.
Thank you so much, dear audience. Thank you so much for being with us, and it is a wonderful session taken by Sava. And we have an exit card session. We have given the link in the chat box. I'm requesting all of you, please click on the link and complete the form. And if you want to be a presenter, please be in touch with Asna and Miss. And in future, we would love to see your presentation. And here is one certificate for our guest speaker. I'm going to share the screen.
Shall I exit my screen share?
Here is the certificate for you. I hope you like it. And I have one as well.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Thank you so much for having me today. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Good night from Bangladesh. Take care.